welcome to the Meet the Candidates series here on WTCO TV. I'm your host, Melissa Kono. I am the Community Development Educator here in Trempealeau County, and I'm also a professor at UW-Madison. 2024 has been a busy election year already, with 2 scheduled elections remaining. First is the August 13th partisan primary, followed by the November 5th presidential and fall general election. For the partisan primary in August, voters are allowed to vote in only one party and should select that party at the top of their ballot. The August partisan primary includes the races for United States Senator, U.S. Representative in Congress. For those of us here in this area, that is District 3, State Senator, Representative for Assembly, and the Trempealeau County Clerk, County Treasurer, and County Register of Deeds. Due to redistricting, there are now 3 assembly districts in Trempealeau County. Those in the northern part of the county are in District 93, those in the middle of the county are now District 29, and some southern parts of the county are now in District 94. All candidates running for U.S. Congress in District 3 were invited to be on the show. All assembly candidates for Districts 93, 29, and 94 were invited. Republican candidates Treg Prunzinski for District 29 and James Rolbecki for District 93 did not respond, but we hope to have them on at a later date. State Senate candidates will also be invited to a show at a later date. I'm joined today by Christian Phelps. He's running as a candidate for the Assembly District 93 as a Democrat. Christian, thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's exciting to be in a county-owned public access TV station. I'm very passionate about local media, actually.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. So first, start off by telling us about yourself.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Eau Claire, was born in 1993, and in the 30 years that I've been a Chippewa Valley person, I've seen a lot of changes in our community. I've lived in Eau Claire the majority of my life. I left a couple of times, went to college outside of the state of Wisconsin, then came back for a couple of years and lived in Madison, and then went to graduate school again outside of Wisconsin before coming back again. But you know, I went to public schools in Eau Claire for all 13 years of my childhood, was raised by public school educators who were themselves raised by public school educators in Wisconsin. So our public education system is really near and dear to me and has kind of been the through line in my life, both professionally, personally, and in terms of my advocacy. I got a degree from Vassar College in 2016, a liberal arts degree, and didn't really know what I wanted to do yet, but I knew that I really cared about young people, education in the community, so I worked as a paraprofessional for a couple of years in special education at an elementary school in Madison. And that was really actually a very eye-opening job to have, because I had been aware of the ways that Wisconsin had started disinvesting in the public for several years, you know, again, being raised by public school educators. I was 17 when Act 10 was introduced, and basically an unprecedented attack on the public education system and public sector laborers was kind of unleashed that year. I had participated in walkouts and protests with my friends, and was getting ready to become a voting age adult and kind of couldn't believe what I was seeing when it passed anyway, and it felt like democracy was being so disrespected. So I had been aware of that, but working as a special ed paraprofessional, I saw up close that, you know, I needed 2, sometimes 3 jobs in order to supplement my income. All my other hourly employee peers needed supplemental income of some kind as well. And you know, we were navigating the stairs and the infrastructure of a 106-year-old school building and spending more time just sort of navigating crisis after crisis than actually providing these students with the education and the peer connection that they really deserved. And it was because the state had been starving that public school of the resources it really needed to thrive. I first got that job 8 years ago, and in the 8 years since then, no child in Wisconsin has seen a budget that was even better than the previous one. And so I worry about letting another generation of children go through our system being continuously deprived of the resources that I know our communities want to invest in them. I ended up deciding that my skills are better used educating the broader public, and so I went into journalism. I know how hard you work. I got a master's in journalism from Cardiff University in the UK, actually, which I got in January 2020, and that's the year that I came back to the Chippewa Valley and have stayed ever since. I've been working for the last 4 years or so at a nonprofit organization called Wisconsin Public Education Network as communications director. Where I've helped people in my community and other communities around the state advocate for children and educators in public schools in whatever way they want to do so. More funding, passing referendums, advocating at the school board level to make sure that our public systems are malleable and responsive to the public. And I've met a lot of amazing people through that work, but also it's just been another avenue which has shown me that the status quo of our state legislature is so frequently the obstacle. I've personally advocated on issues of housing and indigenous rights and many other things that I know are near and dear to the entire community. And the most common denominator when we don't get what our community wants, needs, and deserves is the status quo of the state legislature. So. That's kind of how I came up in West Central Wisconsin. It's a little bit of my professional and personal background. I love the Chippewa Valley. I love West Central Wisconsin. I know that our shared values are really something that we can all get behind because I've seen it over and over in my life from amazing community organizers and just social events. And just yesterday I was at Juneteenth events in 2 different communities in the Chippewa Valley. I mean, there's a lot for us to unite around, and if there weren't, I wouldn't still be here. But I think this is our year to start kind of reinvesting in the public and not only putting more resources, but more responsible rhetoric in favor of the public institutions and also just our public communities and who we really are. So that's kind of why I'm doing this and what brought me here.
Okay, so you're running for the 93rd District for the Wisconsin Assembly. Can you describe that district for us? I know there's been some recent changes with redistricting, and I think it's a little confusing for everyone about where the boundaries lie now.
Yeah, talking about the new legislative maps is actually probably the most frequent topic of conversation I'm having with voters right now because it is very new, and this district is quite different from how it used to be. It is for the better. That same year that Act 10 was introduced and passed despite so much public outcry was the year that our legislative maps were gerrymandered by the majority party at that time. So the Republican Party legislators and governor basically made sure that they could pick and choose their voters and that the legislature would remain in heavy Republican control for 13 years. That has finally changed, and these new maps are much more constitutional and will make a 50-50 state like Wisconsin have a legislature that looks a lot more like what the state looks like, and I think that's a good thing. It's more democratic. The 93rd district actually isn't even the district I used to live in, because the way that gerrymandering works is that sort of if there are population centers that tend to vote against the majority party, they try to get boxed in. So the entire city of Eau Claire used to basically be the 91st district, and then the 93rd covered areas south and west of Eau Claire, but not really the city itself. The new 93rd looks exactly like what a legislative district should look like. It is both rural and urban. It includes roughly the western half of the city of Eau Claire. It includes UW Eau Claire campus, CVTC, and it includes parts of Dunn, Eau Claire, and Trempealeau counties with a pretty even split actually between urban and rural residents. And I think that that is a great change because it means that the representative from this district doesn't have the option of prioritizing rural or urban at the expense of the other one. You have to represent both, and I think that's a good thing. The parts of Trempealeau County that this district covers are basically the northern part, Osseo, Oliva, and Strum, and their surrounding townships.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for that lesson. So what makes you interested for running for this particular office?
This was never the plan. I never really wanted to do this.
It never is.
But the new legislative maps really do give us an opportunity to start making our state policy and our state investments match the priorities of our community. And the state has disinvested from the public for so long that I am I'm very worried because I don't think we have any more time to waste or any more time to wait for that investment in the public to start again. I've been advocating on multiple issues for a long time. You know, I've been in the advocacy space, I've written on these topics, I've professionally advocated for a few years and personally for many more than that. And most of that advocacy has taken me to the state legislative level. Again, because so frequently I found that the common denominator in the root of the problem was happening at the state level, a state budget where resources are just being deprived and hoarded in the Capitol with this irresponsible surplus we have right now, taxes we all already paid that the state has refused to invest. The Republican legislative majority has refused to invest back in our communities like we asked them to. And on so many issues, you know, housing issues at the local level, I've found that in many ways municipalities' hands are tied, and that's true in small municipalities as well, in counties and small towns and townships. When the state doesn't give municipalities the resources they need, they can't help their communities the way that they want to. You know, Wisconsin has reverted after the overturning of Roe v. Wade to what I find to be a grotesque, no exceptions abortion ban written many years before women even had the right to vote in Wisconsin. All of these things just kept leading me back to the state legislative level. And because of that, this is the level where I know my stuff the best, and it's where I think the most change needs to be made in Wisconsin. When I saw that the 93rd had a chance for good, bold, and strategic representation for the first time in a long time, I just found myself unable to talk myself out of doing this. You know, it feels like a personal hurdle you have to clear in order to be willing to do this, but come January 2025, I really don't think we have any time to wait for a strategic legislature that's going to start reinvesting in the public, crawling back from these disinvestments, restoring responsible rhetoric that makes young people feel safe and welcome in our communities. And I think the legislature is where I'm best equipped to make that difference. So, so I think this is our time as a community, and I think we'll really regret it if we don't take this opportunity as the responsibility it is to put you know, not just more Democrats in the legislature, but more sort of bold strategic thinkers that represent our communities.
So if elected, what do you hope to accomplish?
There's a lot that we need to accomplish, and I think that we need to have in mind both the North Star, the big changes that we really do need in our state and our society, and also the small changes that we can take along the way as the result of responsible negotiations with our colleagues and constituents that move us along that path. Some of my priorities are funding strong public schools. Our public schools have been defunded relative to inflation every year for the last 16 years in a row. And there are school districts in the state of Wisconsin and here in the 93rd, especially small rural school districts, that literally can't survive another bad budget. And they're going to be looking at things like being absorbed, closing, going to do or die referendums that may or may not pass. We've seen those already accelerating. We need to invest in our public schools right now because it's actually an emergency. And the way you do that, even in a split legislature, is you point out where the legislature has been the most out of alignment with public opinion. And a perfect example of that is special education. I have never met anybody, no matter what their political affiliation is, who is really happy to hear that the state of Wisconsin has only been funding 30% of special education. That's really wrong, morally wrong, and we have the funds to fund special ed fully without raising any taxes. The surplus is already there. So if we point that out to constituents around Wisconsin and sort of hold ourselves and our colleagues of both parties accountable for actually doing what the public wants, we can boost special education funding dramatically in the next budget, but only if we have strategic legislators that know how the budget works and know how to do that. So that's a big priority for me. In addition, we need to start phasing out private school vouchers. Every single school district that touches the 93rd is losing some of its funds to private schools that are not held to the same level of accountability and are not required to accept all students. And the enrollment caps on that program are set to come off in 2026. And I've never heard anybody explain how we're going to pay for that. So with this 2025 budget being written very shortly after the new legislature is sworn in, those are two serious priorities for me, that we start to responsibly address the bleeding of public school funds to unaccountable private schools, and to seriously boost special education funding so that we can get closer to the North Star of just having our schools funded based on what students need and not based on property taxes the way it is right now. Other priorities for me are restoring reproductive freedom. That's one of the major things I'm hearing at the doors when I talk to voters, and I've actually been really touched by the fact that age is no indicator, particularly among women, of people who really see that as a priority. I was talking to somebody in her late 80s, yesterday, who said that is her main concern this year, because she's worried about her daughters and granddaughters and other women in the community, and just wants to see these basic rights of healthcare expanded. So I think we need to address the fact that the abortion ban and the fact that it's all sort of tied up in a volatile Supreme Court right now is just not acceptable in the public, and that we need to legislate towards some more stable reproductive healthcare access. The Eau Claire area also lost 2 hospitals abruptly this year, and that is largely because the state of Wisconsin has allowed for this system to be so unstable that can happen. I've talked to a lot of people who've had to have appointments changed. Sometimes they're now back on a wait list. They don't know how long it's going to be. Emergency rooms are full. People are being funneled into one singular facility when they really could be funneled into multiple based on their needs for less cost. The state can grant to provide more specialty mental health clinics. That would be cheaper for everybody, and it would be more efficient, so that mental health emergencies aren't being treated in emergency rooms, but instead are being treated in mental health clinics. And we must accept federal Medicaid expansion. I believe that healthcare is a human right and shouldn't be tied to people's employment. Wisconsin actually is in a unique position as the only state in the U.S. that has actually passed public healthcare, public single-payer healthcare through one body of its legislature. That happened in 2007. It passed in the Senate, not the Assembly. But we have a blueprint that I think we could really be a leader in the country on showing what it looks like to take care of your populace and make sure that healthcare is a human right. We don't get there in 2025, I realize, but we can do some strategic things along the way that move us closer to healthcare as a human right and invest back in the community. So I'd say those 3 things are 3 of my top priorities. It's hard to itemize them because we also need to expand our protection of the environment. I often just say that I'm a pro-public candidate, and that means I believe in the public. I've seen the public in the Chippewa Valley and throughout Wisconsin really unite around some shared values. We must invest in public education, public land to protect the environment, public health, public transportation, and public participation in democracy. And so these are some of the pillars that I think are really shared among people of all stripes and in our diverse communities around the Chippewa Valley, that strategic legislators who have community organizing background, communications background, and the time to really get into the weeds of this job can start making some real headway on next year.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Christian Phelps is an Assembly candidate for District 93 on the Democratic ticket for the August primary. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
I'm joined by Nick Butler. He is a candidate running for Assembly for the 93rd District. Nick, thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you start off by telling us about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Nicholas Butler. I'm a 44-year-old father, husband, and writer. I live in the town of Washington, adjacent to my neighbor Kyle Wathke's Buffalo Farm. My primary job, other than being a stay-at-home dad, is a writer. I've written, to date, 4 novels and 1 collection of short stories, and I wrote for the Leader-Telegram for about 5 years, writing these sawdust stories, essays about sort of local small businesses and environmental issues and things that were just happening in my life. I grew up in Eau Claire. That's how I met my wife. I think I remember the first time I saw her when we were 10 or 12. We grew up in the same church. I graduated from Eau Claire Memorial, and then I went on to school at UW-Madison. And after graduating from Madison, I had kind of a 10-year period where I just worked a lot of different jobs. I was a coffee roaster for a while. I worked as a liquor store clerk. I ran 2 different bed and breakfasts. I was an author escort, which is sort of a strange job, but basically that means like an author would come to town and I'd pick them up at the airport, take them to their event, take them out to dinner. So that was fun and different. And around the time I was 30, I got accepted to the University of Iowa Writers Workshop, and my writing career really kind of kicked off at that moment in sort of a big way. And in 2014, my first novel, Shotgun Love Songs, was published, which is kind of germane to the 93rd Assembly District because it's all about small towns in this part of the world and rural Wisconsin. And it was in 2013 that we moved back to the Eau Claire area, and it's been fantastic. It's the only place in the world I want to live. We've got 2 kids, a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old in Eau Claire Public Schools, and yeah, we love it.
So there has been some redistricting, and it is, I think, confusing to everyone now where those boundaries lie. So can you describe to us what areas of Trempealeau County are included in the 93rd District?
Yeah. So I think the way that I begin explaining the map is just if you think about the city of Eau Claire as sort of being the north central part of the district. If you come down south from there, you've got Oliva, Strum, Osseo. So those are the primary communities south of Eau Claire that are affected, and all the rural sort of outlying areas there too. To the west of the district, it goes all the way to Downsville, but not quite up to Menominee.
Okay.
But, yeah.
So what makes you interested in running for this particular office?
Yeah, I mean, you know, my campaign manager, Kristen Dexter, who's a former assembly person, told me that, you know, there's a time in a person's life sometimes where like a door opens or a window opens and you realize you feel called to do something. And I think for me, the longer that I've been on this campaign and thinking about what that reason was, I think that not just the Eau Claire, but the entire district, whether we're talking about Strum, Oliva, Osseo, Downsville, they have given me so much. This area has given me so much and improved my life in so many ways, whether it's Eau Claire Public Schools, whether it's my wife's family being from the Oliva Strum area, whether it's the landscape that I really love and the work ethic of people here and how that affects my writing. I just feel tremendous gratitude and gratefulness. And I think there was this moment where I just felt like I didn't want to be sitting on my couch on election day and feel like I could have done something and I didn't. You know, we're experiencing a healthcare crisis all throughout this district, in fact, all throughout the state. And that's something that we need to address. We can do better than what we're doing right now. 2 kids in Eau Claire Public Schools, like I want the very best for them. I don't want an okay school system or a totally underfunded school system. I had the great privilege of going through public schools during a great time where I had teachers with great morale who hung around for decades and decades and recognized that I was going to be a writer, and you know, they helped me out. So I want to help out the public schools. I want to be a champion for our teachers and our students, you know, and the janitors and the support staff that work there. I'm worried about women's reproductive rights. I'm worried about contraception. I've got 2, you know, an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old at home, and we're at that sort of strange time where you have to have serious conversations about, you know, health, okay? And I worry that they won't have the same access that I had as a teenager. I worry about affordable health care. You know, our family has paid not hundreds, not thousands, but tens of thousands of dollars for daycare. And I know that it's a sort of heartbreaking decision, you know, when one parent's paycheck is going entirely towards daycare. And maybe they think, geez, should I just stay home? You know, but they're a smart person. They should be out in the workforce being productive. And I worry about affordable housing. I worry about people younger than me who feel boxed out of the American dream. They can't buy a house, they can't build wealth, and that's totally different than their parents' experience or their grandparents' experience. I worry about poll workers. You know, we all share this electoral system, and we didn't demonize poll workers 10 years ago, you know, and now I don't know, I can't even conceptualize why we're doing that. And the final thing is, you know, I'm really, you know, in our campaign we call it land, but really that's environmental issues. But in a rural district like ours, I think farmers and people that hunt, they think of it as their land. So we're interested in water issues, we're interested in public lands, and when I think about all those issues, I just, you know, gratitude kind of combined with civic responsibility, and then I was like, I guess I'm running for office. Here we go.
Okay, and so if elected, what do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, well, you know, our platform is HEAL, healthcare, education, aid and access, and land. And I think, like a lot of people in Wisconsin, I am tired of partisanship. I'm tired of people yelling at each other. I think we need to get some things done. I think this is an opportunity to come together and say, like, are we satisfied being 49th in the country in arts funding? Could we do a little better than that? Are you satisfied with our public schools? You know, would you like to make them a little better? Did you graduate from a UW system school? Are you satisfied with the way we're supporting those schools? Would you like to do a little better? Do you think there's a healthcare crisis? I do. Do you want to work together to try to fix that? So I think there's a real opportunity for conversation and collective action, and let's move forward, you know. That's our state motto, forward. So, yeah.
Anything else you'd like to share?
I just want to say that, like, you know, when this map was redrawn and I looked at it the first time and really internalized what it looked like, it was basically the map of my books and the essays I've been writing. And I would be so proud and honored to represent the people in this district because they inspire me, you know, with their faith, with their hard work, with the way that they take care and improve their land. I'm inspired by our seasons, by our landscape. And so to me, this has been more than a wonderful experience. It's just like, it's a chance to try to give back. And we're going to try as hard as we can to win this election. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Nicholas Butler is running for Wisconsin Assembly in the 93rd District. Well, I'm joined today by Ryan Hipsch. He is a candidate running for the 94th Assembly District. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Yeah. So can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Ryan Hipsch, running for the 94th Assembly District, which I will kind of go into the new district with the lines that are drawn. So we used to have just outside of the city of La Crosse. So that would be West Salem, Holmen, Bangor, Berry Mills, and everything around the city. That changed where we lost Bangor and Berry Mills, and now we're only into West Salem, Holmen, and Onalaska in La Crosse County. But we picked up the southern part of Trempealeau County, and it's bigger than most people think. So we have Galesville and Ettrick, but we also have the towns of Caledonia and Gale as well. So we have that now in just outside of Trempealeau too, the town of Trempealeau. So that's the brand new district. But a little bit about myself. You know, I grew up in West Salem. I was born in Alaska, grew up in West Salem, going to public education schools there in West Salem High School, where then I went to TC and transferred to UW La Crosse, where I graduated with honors there, which I had a blast at UWL. It's a great school to be there. But after that, I had the opportunity to go and work at the state capitol for a couple of senators. One, Senator Scott Fitzgerald, now the congressman, and the senator out of Green Bay, Eric Wimberger. I had a bunch of private sector jobs in the area in Onalaska and West Salem before that, but that experience in the Capitol gave me just that, a really good experience in working with policy and constituent services. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. But then I came back and actually ran a campaign. Senator Dan Kapanke, I don't know if you, that name is, yeah, he's everywhere. Everyone knows him. And
it's hard to miss that name.
Oh my Lord, he's a great man. and
Yeah.
and I lucky to call him a friend and actually have his endorsement too. But I ran his campaign and worked in the Capitol a little bit more, but came back and ran for office myself here in the what used to be the old 94th Assembly District in 2022. Now just came up short, unfortunately, just a couple hundred votes out of a little over 30,000. But we worked our tails off and knocked on thousands and thousands of doors. And I think we were actually some of the most, or my team and I, Jason in the corner over there, we knocked on some of the most doors that we've seen in the entire state. So we like to hold that and that's a good accomplishment, I guess, that we could say. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. But I also, right now, currently am the executive director for the Wisconsin Conservative Energy Forum. Now, we're a nonprofit that works with conservative side of things and kind of advocating for clean and renewable energy, which can be a tough task sometimes. But that gives me the opportunity to go across the state and talk to conservatives about the importance of the all of the above approach to renewable energy. So nuclear energy, wind, solar, I mean, name it, and we're talking about it. Yeah, so that's what I do now, and obviously running for the 94th.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So what makes you interested in running for assembly?
Yeah, so here in Trempealeau County, you guys had Treg Prunchinsky, the representative, and I've taken over for him. And I'm lucky to call him a friend and also have his endorsement. He did a great job down in Madison. I want to continue that. I want to make sure that we have that great representation that Treg had in this area. Unfortunately, we don't have that down in the southern part of the 94th now. Steve, my opponent, Steve Doyle, has kind of turned his back on us, unfortunately, and that's kind of why I want to run. And there's a few points that I want to make sure that people hear and I apologize for all the political ads that everyone's going to get. We all hate getting in the mail and all the TV ads, and I apologize for that. But we're making sure that we're telling the truth on this. So some of the issues that really hit home for me, we had one of the largest tax cuts in the entire state history. And actually, I don't know why, but he brags about this. He had COVID during that, when they took the vote in Madison. He had COVID and it was in his office and came down and made a heroic fight to take this vote. That vote was to block this tax cut, which blows my mind. That's not what we need. We need tax cuts here. One of the other big things is public education. We saw one of the largest increase in funding for public education this last year, $1 billion. He voted against it. That's turning his back on the students and the great teachers that we have over here in western Wisconsin. Now, I can't talk about the other side of the state. Milwaukee public school system is kind of going through some bad things. But over here, we're proud of our schools. We're proud of our students and our teachers. He turned his back on us and voted against the funding for that. That's just unfortunate. Another thing, and this is just common sense, and I don't know if we can hear the rain coming down right now, but that it kind of hints to that. Clean drinking water. A common sense issue, something that we should have everywhere. We have an issue down in French Island right now where people are still drinking out of bottled water. I have friends and tons of friends actually still drinking out of bottled water. We had an opportunity to fix this issue. We had an opportunity to have $125 million come into the state and clean this issue up, this PFAS, and get clean drinking water. Now, our friend Dan Kapanke is actually the town chairman down in town of Campbell. He's working to make sure that we have drinking water there in town of Campbell. But we had $125 million proposed to help fix this. He voted against that. My opponent voted against that. This is just a common sense issue that we're just continuing to run into, and it's unfortunate to say the least. And this is why I want to make sure that I follow the footsteps of Treg, of where we have good representation. We've lost that down in Madison, and it's unfortunate.
So Treg Prunchinsky is still running, but due to redistricting, he just doesn't cover that part now.
So he is now, I think he's got Trempealeau, the town of Trempealeau, and then everything north. He's got a big district. His is more rural, so he'll cover all
so he'll still running for assembly, but just in a different, slightly different area. So You know, you mentioned some of those issues that are important to you. So if elected, what do you hope to accomplish, and maybe how would you go about, you know, obtaining funding for French Island, for example?
Well, that's a great question, and exactly kind of what I just talked about. Complete opposite. I just get the seat back at the table, get a strong and fresh voice down in Madison, which we haven't seen for far too long. You know, just common sense issues. Broadband is actually a big issue up in this neck of the woods. This is something that we need to make sure we have funding for. Clean drinking water, supporting our schools. Common sense issues that have just gone to the wayside. And unfortunately, in Western Wisconsin, because we haven't had that good representation, we've lost out on several projects. One of the projects, and we talked about, you know, lacrosse. Now I know we've gone through some issues with UWL in the last year or two with the chancellor, but there's been projects there that we've missed out on because we haven't had that representation. The science building, the second phase to finish that. We don't have that representation, so it won't get finished. That's a big project that a lot of the industries around our area, Quick Trips and Gundersons, and they are fighting for that. That's something I would fight for right away. But these projects, and I mean, we can talk about roads, and unfortunately, I mean, just driving up here, it was a little rough. So these simple common sense issues that I want to make sure we have a voice down in Madison for. Right? We've just been without that for far too long. Yeah.
All right. Anything else you'd like to share?
Make sure to vote November 5th. I know there's going to be early voting and absentee voting. Make sure you know how you're going to get to the polls. I think we had an issue in April election where, you know, I think there was a big storm or something.
There always is.
There's always a storm, right? And there's always an issue on election day. Make sure you know how you're going to go out and vote, and make sure you do it safely and correctly. And make sure to ask your clerks, our awesome clerks over here in Western Wisconsin. Make sure you ask how you do that correctly and get out to the polls. We need as many people as we can voting, absolutely.
And I'll have a little bit more information at the end of the show about you know, learning more about the ballot and polling places, etc. So, well, Ryan, thank you so much for being here.
I really appreciate the time.
Ryan Hipsch is a assembly candidate for the 94th District.
Thank you.
I'm joined by Steve Doyle. He is running for Assembly District 94. Steve, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah. Well, could you start off by telling us about yourself?
Sure. I have had this seat since 2011. I was elected in a special election when my predecessor was appointed by Governor Walker to be his Secretary of Administration. So I got elected in a special election right after Act 10. So it was a very tense time in Madison. In fact, years ago I worked in the Capitol, and you walk right in and everything's just fine. The first day that I got elected and went to the Capitol, I had to go through metal detectors, and it was just a very tense place. It's gotten a little bit better since then, but so I've had this position since 2011. Before that, I was county board chair in La Crosse, and really enjoyed that job because I could actually do things. You know, I could say, I think this is a great idea, let's try this, and it would actually happen. Then I go to Madison, and I have these great ideas, and some of them happen and some of them don't happen. So it is a little bit different world. In my other life, I'm a lawyer, and I do a lot of mediation. So I try to find ways to make things win-win, whether it's a lawsuit against somebody's neighbor or a divorce case or whatever. I meet with people usually in separate rooms, and I go back and forth and try to find ways that people can walk out of there saying, okay, this is good. And that's kind of the skill set that I've tried to take to Madison is you know, I'm a member right now of the minority party, but I've still had a lot of bills get passed because I have this approach that, you know, I want to work with people. There are some of my colleagues in both parties that like to get the headlines. They like to be bomb throwers. That is not me at all. I'd rather work under the radar and try to get things done. A good example of that. Several years ago, shortly after I was elected, a person from the tech school came to me and said, we have a disconnect in La Crosse. We've got a lot of job openings in a particular area, and we have people that aren't quite there yet in terms of their training. And they said, let's talk about some ideas that we can make that disconnect be connected. So I met with them, we came up with a proposed bill, and I went to my then colleague at the time, Lee Narrison from the West Beaver-Oakwa area, and I said, Lee, I have this idea, it's going to put people to work, it's going to help our local businesses. Would you be the lead author, since you're in the majority party, and if you'd be nice enough, could you put me as the second author? And Lee said, no, I don't want to do that. He said, Steve, I think you should be the first author, I'll be the second author, and I will tell the leadership in my party that this is an important bill and we should pass it. That's how you work together. I mean, it's that kind of thing where I didn't care if I got the headlines for it or he got the headlines for it. It was the right thing to do, and that is what I've tried to do in my entire assembly career.
So there has been some redistricting. Could you explain the areas that the 94th district covers?
Sure. My district somewhat shifted north. I used to go actually down to the La Crosse County southern line. Now I've moved up, and so I have one small part of the north side of La Crosse. I have Onalaska, Holman, West Salem, Farmington, Holland, and then going up into Trempealeau County, really it's kind of almost like an arrow going north. So it goes through Galesville, a little bit through Ettrick, and just a little beyond the Ettrick boundary.
Okay, and that part is new to your district?
That part is new to me. I had not represented Trempealeau County in the past, and it's been great. One of the coolest things was doing the tour of the square in Galesville and finding out that all those businesses are women-owned, which is, you don't see that very often, so that was pretty neat. And everybody's just been so nice to talk with. I mean, it's just like this whole Midwest, everybody's really friendly and very, very encouraging. And people don't ask me, are you a Democrat or Republican? They're like, hey, let's just talk.
So you have served in the Assembly for a while. What makes you interested in running for this particular office again?
So in the past, my entire career so far has been in the minority. And it was like deeper and deeper and deeper in the minority as time went on. And Madison is so divided. And it's because the split is so big. We have, when you look at the old lines, people in Madison, for example, are going to be Democrats, and your concern if you're a Democrat in Madison is not that you're going to get beat by a Republican, is that you're going to get beat by another Democrat. So you want to be as liberal as you can get. If you're in the suburbs of Milwaukee, you're a Republican, you're not going to get beat by a Democrat, you're going to get beat by a more conservative Republican, so you move further to the right. So we have these two camps that don't even talk with each other. And that has been so frustrating, and that gap has only seemed to widen. Now with the new district lines, it's much more balanced. And I don't know come November if the Democrats will have a majority or the Republicans will have a majority, but everybody pretty much agrees it's going to be very close. What does that mean? We have to talk with each other. And that is what I have been doing all along. So that's why it's like, this is a great opportunity for me to use the skill set that I've developed as a lawyer, as a county board chair, and in the assembly, of bringing people together to get things done by agreement. I mean, we have so many ideas out there. A simple one. The Democrats support a tax cut, the Republicans support a tax cut. They're a little bit different than each other. So what does that mean? Nothing happens. And so if we can get people to at least start to talk with each other, I think we can do great things for the state of Wisconsin.
So what issues that are local to this area do you advocate for then in Madison?
Well, schools is certainly a very important one. We are better than we were a few years ago. We gave the schools and actually local governments in general a shot in the arm, but we have a long way to go in that regard. And if you talk to school superintendents, they'll tell you the #1 problem is special education. That is so expensive, and it only takes 1 or 2 cases to just blow a huge hole in the budget. So I think we really need to work on that. We also gave a shot in the arm to roads. We're getting better, but this is Wisconsin. We have 4 seasons, and we have real hard time keeping our roads up. So we need to continue to work on that. And then healthcare. We need more access to healthcare. You know, what's happened north of here with the closure of the one facility. Fortunately, you know, we haven't seen the ripple effects down in the southern part of the district, but you know, those kind of things can always happen. And you know, access to healthcare in a country like the United States should be a given, but it's not. So those are probably the three biggest issues that I like to work on in Madison that have an effect statewide, but certainly in my district.
So speaking of that, if reelected, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, two things. One is I certainly want to be involved in those big issues that I just described there. But you know, I've really kind of made my name doing those under the radar issues. So the speaker's task forces that he creates every 2 years are something that's really been attractive to me. The first one that I was actually a co-chair of was called the Study Committee on Child Welfare, kids in the abuse and neglect system. So what we found was that kids would be maybe 8 years old, and in the course of their lifetime they had been in maybe half a dozen different foster homes, no stability. When I was in my early years of practice, I represented kids that were in neglect and abuse cases, and then several years later I would see those kids' names on the criminal calendar. It's like, we failed. I mean, we saw this child as a 4-year-old, and now we're seeing this child as a 14-year-old or a 24-year-old, and this is our fault. So we had a lot of ideas to fix problems. I think we passed probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 bills to make that process better, make it more stable for the kids. It doesn't get a lot of headlines. The governor came to La Crosse to sign the bill because most of those bills were my bills. But it's one that, like I said, it doesn't get a lot of headlines, but man, we changed a lot of lives. And so I'm very proud of that. I also was the vice chair of the Speaker's Task Force on Suicide Prevention. Personal issue to me. I lost a brother to suicide a couple decades ago, and so I've always wanted to do things to help people in that kind of a crisis. And again, we had probably about half a dozen bills that we passed. And these are the kind of bills that pass unanimously. Abused and neglected kids aren't Democrats or Republicans, they're kids. People who are contemplating suicide, we don't care if they're Democrats or Republicans, they're people in need. And so, I like those kind of issues. So to answer your question, what do I want to do in the next session? That kind of stuff. The stuff that will make a difference in people's lives that you may never hear about, but it will change lives.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I really have enjoyed being in the legislature. I like doing stuff that helps people's lives in terms of legislation, but the other aspect of being in the legislature is helping people's lives one-on-one. One of the funnest things that I do is I send out honor roll letters, and we have smart kids in my district because I send out about 2,000 of those every semester with a handwritten note on each one, because we don't seem to pay a lot of attention to the good stuff that kids do. We pay attention to when they're in the paper doing something bad. So I like doing that kind of thing. I have a staffer in Madison that was just an expert on helping people during the pandemic who weren't getting their unemployment compensation, and we had people from all over the state literally calling our office. So it's helping people that makes a difference in their life that is so cool about this job. I mean, I can actually get things done that makes me feel good about doing it. I don't go to Madison and yell and scream and pound my fist on the table over different issues. I go to Madison, roll up my sleeves, make some phone calls, write some letters, meet with people. That is, for me, what the job is all about, and that's what I want to continue doing.
All right, well, thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed it.
Steve Doyle is running for the Wisconsin Assembly, District 94. I'm joined now by Terry Schoonover. He is a candidate running for the 29th Assembly District. He's running as a Democrat. Terry, welcome.
Thanks, Melissa. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. Can you start off first by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. I live between Alma and Cochrane in Buffalo County. Born and raised in Wisconsin. I was born in at St. Joe's in Marshfield and raised and grew up in Loyal, Wisconsin. Oldest of 9, so I had to figure out how to get along with people.
Natural born leader.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully. Yeah, the new 29th Assembly District actually runs from most of Trempealeau County, all of Buffalo, all of Pepin, and most of Pierce. So it basically runs from Trempealeau, village of Trempealeau, all the way up to Prescott, over to Pigeon Falls, Whitehall, Arcadia, Mondovi, Durand. I put on probably over 3,000 miles so far, just talking to constituents.
Yep.
And it's just it's a big place.
Yeah, and not an easy drive anywhere you go from there.
No, I know. You know, going through these coulees and valleys, but it's beautiful. I mean, you know, the Driftless area is just a marvelous spot. Now we've got a lot of rain here the last few days. There was a little minor flooding, but I was able to get through it.
Okay.
Okay.
So then, what brought you to this area?
Well, actually, I worked at Mayo Clinic for 20 years, and so when I retired, we moved to our homestead here, and I've been here 7 years.
Wow.
And we literally, my wife is from the cities, I am from Loyal, worked in Rochester. We literally, when we retired, we drew 3 circles and said, this is kind of in the middle, and it was right on the river. I like to ride motorcycle, snowmobile, and it's just been it's a gorgeous area. And so that's kind of what brought us here. We, initially, we've been converting highly erodible bluffland into pollinator habitat, prairie, to try and keep the soil out of the river. And I thought retirement was going to be, you know, a piece of cake, and in 7 years I've been as busy as I've ever been. But it's looking great. It's fun to be here.
Now you're running for Wisconsin Assembly. What made you interested in running for that particular office?
Well, 3 years ago I got involved. I kind of cut my teeth on fair maps. And so the first thing we did in Buffalo County, we approached the Board of Supervisors, and we said we'd like to get a referendum on fair maps. They were being passed all over the counties in the state. And unanimously they said, yes, let's put a referendum on the ballot. And in November then of 21, I think it was, the referendum passed by almost 70% in conservative Buffalo County. So Republicans and Democrats both agreed we should have fair maps. And that got me involved, and then I worked with some folks who I guess liked the way I was working, and I got prodded here back in March to, you know, find out if I'd consider running for this position. And so that's what, and my first call was actually to someone who I worked with on the fair maps to see if they would, I thought they'd be more qualified than me. I was going to be retired, enjoy my prairie, have a beer on the deck, and not, you know, do anything else this summer. They weren't ready for the race, for a state race, and so the more I thought of it, I thought, you know, we, if they thought I was a good candidate, I'm all in. My campaign manager has got me going to every village, town, county board meeting, events. Yesterday I was at the Buffalo County Dairy Breakfast. Kind of a shout out to Marbeck. It's amazing to me. Farmers are pretty resilient. You know, it was canceled on Saturday because of the rain. And but when you look at the scale of this, it's just amazing the support that farmers in our farming community have. So it was really encouraging to see that.
Okay. So I know you mentioned fair maps and that the Assembly 29 is newly redistricted to include more of those areas. What issues are you hearing that are important to people living in that area?
What I've been hearing consistently from every corner of the district is that the voters they're exhausted at the level of hyperpartisanship in Madison. They're tired of the gridlock, and so they just want a candidate that can actually collaborate, work in the middle to get things done. One of the things I did, well, I spent a career at Mayo Clinic, and as an emergency management coordinator, part of my job was to collaborate with entities as diverse as local and state law enforcement, EMS, fire departments, public health, elected officials. And if you know some of those groups, they can be fairly strong-willed. But we got along. We got stuff done. And I like to think we were good at doing that because we respected each other. I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but you know, back in the day when Ronald Reagan was president and Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House, during the day they kind of butted heads. They were political rivals. At night, they were two Irish guys. They'd go to the pub and have a couple beers. They liked each other, they respected each other, and they got stuff done. And that's what I'm hearing from voters in the district. One of the most encouraging things I've heard is people, after they talk to me, they say, you know what, Terry, I vote for the person, not the party.
Yeah, I mentioned this to you before, but I'm a town clerk, and I hear that a lot from voters too, voting for the person and not the party. So if elected to this office, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, actually, working across the aisle, I'm at a stage in my life. I'm not too worried about getting beat up if I work in the middle, because right now the extremes kind of beat up those folks that do that. I would probably, a couple issues off the top of my mind that are just really critical. Schools. Prescott just lost a school referendum. 1,400 voters, they lost by 12 votes. And so now they're going to be cutting teachers, classes, or whatever. You know, it just, I don't understand how we can be sitting on a $3.5 billion surplus in Madison. We're capping school spending. And then we're saying, well, if you want to make up the difference, pass a referendum. And some schools can do that, some school districts. Some can't afford it. And I just don't understand how we can kind of ignore that. And we need to support schools. As you know, Eau Claire has just had I would say we're in a healthcare desert.
Yes.
And they've closed a couple hospitals. Now, Whitehall just opened up Gunderson Hospital, which is wonderful, but it's the exception, not the rule. And so we really live in a healthcare desert. Again, we've chosen to not expand Medicaid. It's cost our state about $1.6 billion over 10 years. Now that would buy a lot of healthcare services. I understand there's a philosophical difference, but you know, we're subsidizing Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Michigan. They're all taking Medicaid expansion. We're not. And so why are we subsidizing those states and not getting that benefit?
What other issues are near and dear to your heart?
Well, as we talked a little bit about election integrity, and you know, I would say if people are interested in finding more about me and my the priority issues that I have, you know, we've got a really comprehensive website, schoonover48029.com. But election integrity, I'm a poll worker. I've taken the training, and my mom, who still works the polls in Loyal, Wisconsin, she's 87 years old. It kind of bothered me in the last couple of elections that poll workers were being kind of harassed. And so I took the training. I said, I'm going to find out what this is all about. I've taken the training. I'm a chief inspector in the town of Belvedere. And I've met some of the most patriotic citizens who run these elections. And it just really bothers me when people tell me, you know, if I win, it's well run, but if I lose, it's rigged. I would just tell people, take the training, go through it. There's an observation area people can look at to see what's going on, but don't criticize this, because it's just, it's really, it's hard for election clerks and poll workers.
Yep. Well, thank you for that. Anything else you'd like to share?
Well, you know, this has been an incredibly busy time. There were a couple folks that asked me, are you sure you want to put your hat in the ring on this crazy thing? I've been kind of jaded at some point, but you know what? We can't give up. And I just said, I will give up I'll give up the summer. I'll get to all these events. I think with my background, people have been telling me they just want a candidate that can work across the aisle and get things done. And so that's why I'm all in. I've been hearing a lot of comments from, you know, roads The road
Yes.
conditions in Mondovi. I talked to a mother in Duran. She's on 8 waiting lists for childcare. And that's another issue. I don't understand why we can't be doing more to support childcare. Folks they're not making any money. They can't afford to keep the help. Yet we're sitting on this money. Now I would say, we want to save some of that. We don't want to spend it all, obviously, but we've got all these problems out here. The legislature has dismissed early, taken off, and still we've got these issues here, and it just really frustrates me. So I'm hoping people actually research the candidates and look into it a little bit and find out, vote the person and not the party.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Melissa.
Terry Schoonover is a candidate for the 29th Assembly District, running as a Democrat. I'm joined by Sue Ackerman. She is a candidate for the Trempealeau County Register of Deeds, running as a Republican. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks so much for being here. Would you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Sue Ackerman. As Melissa said, I am running for Register of Deeds. I've been employed by the county for 22 years. I'm actually in my 23rd year, and all of that has been in the Register of Deeds office. So I've learned a fair amount. My husband and I moved here from Minnesota in 1996. So as of now, I've lived in Wisconsin longer than I've lived in Minnesota. We raised our 3 children here, and they all graduated from Arcadia High School. And their names are Justin, Taylor, and Brooke. And we live still in Arcadia.
Okay. And you have the luxury of having worked in that office, but the Register of Deeds, I'm not sure everyone knows what that is. Would you mind telling us what that office does and some of the duties that are assigned to that office?
Sure. Well, we record land records, so anything involving land, mortgages, deeds, lis pendens. We also take care of vital records, and we're entrusted with recording them accurately in a timely fashion and preserving them for years to come. We've got records that date back to the 1800s.
Okay. And then what made you interested in running for this office?
Well, a lot of reasons. I really like my job. I like the work. It's fun when people come in and you're looking for that small piece of land, when you actually can trace back their history and find it. It's like solving a puzzle. So I just enjoy it. And the next step I felt was to run the office.
And now this is a partisan office, meaning that you have to run as a Republican or a Democrat. You have to declare a party. And the question I get from voters a lot is, well, why is this county office, a partisan office? And, what would you say to that, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think you're right. People look at both sides. They're saying it can be partisan. Is it nonpartisan? Our office is governed by state statutes. So we have guidelines we have to follow. And as far as being, you really have to do it in an unbiased fashion. People come in, you are the keeper of their records. It's public record. Some of the things are confidential. And you have to know what is what. And I feel like everybody coming into the office should be treated with dignity and respect and treated fairly.
Okay. And then if elected to this position, what do you hope to accomplish?
We do have some one-of-a-kind records that are still in our office that aren't backed up. And I think if there's a fire, a flood, anything like that, it's really important to preserve these records. So we have a scanning project that I would like to see through and get everything backed up.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to share?
The other thing that I would like to mention is that we do have a program called Property Fraud Alert that you can sign up for. It's a free program, and we'll put a number and a website on the screen so you can sign up for that.
Sue Ackerman is a candidate for the Trempealeau County Register of Deeds, running as a Republican in the August primary. Here with me is Mary Martin. She is a candidate for the Trempealeau County Clerk. Mary, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Mary Martin. I've been a lifelong resident of Trempealeau County. Been married 37 years to my husband. We've got 2 children and 2 grandchildren. Been spending a lot of time at softball games this summer. I've graduated from GET. Belong to St. Bridget's Catholic Church in Ettrick. Volunteer there for different things. One of my passions is the Trempealeau County Humane Society. I've been there 15 years. And volunteering, I did payroll, donated my time for payroll and taxes. Enjoyed that very much. The animals are just the best paycheck you can ever get is spending time with animals. So yeah, I have worked for the county for over 29 years. I started out at the healthcare center. I was the first female farm lady a long time ago, and they don't have the barn anymore. But I started with Trempealeau County at the courthouse in 1995 in the Trempealeau County Clerk's office. So I've had almost 20 years of experience in that office. Wow. And then almost 9 years ago, I did a lateral move out to the highway department, and I do cost accounting out there and payroll. A little bit of HR liaison for the guys that work out there when they can't make it into the courthouse. So,
So you worked in that office for 20 years, in the county clerk's office. Can you tell us a little bit about the county clerk job?
Yep, I did the payroll part of things. I did the elections, marriage license, a lot of counter help. And tourism used to be in that office, and I did the tourism. So
okay,
yeah.
All right. So what makes you interested in running for this particular office?
Well, I guess the timing was right. My former boss, Paul Severson, has decided to retire, and I thought now would be a good opportunity to come back. I miss the highway department. It's more with the cost accounting and dealing with the guys and job numbers, and not so much the public. And dealing in the county clerk's office, it's a lot more with the customer service. And I really miss that over the years, so I kind of would like to get back to that. And because I spent almost 20 years in that office, I feel a comfort level in there. And since Paul is retiring, and an honor that he is endorsing me, so I feel like maybe he feels I could do the job. So.
Yeah, and so would you mind telling us a little bit about, you know, you mentioned elections are run within that office. Can you maybe explain to us, because you know I'm also a town clerk, so I do see that side and that clerk support that office provides, but I'm not sure that people always know what the county clerk does and how important that role is. Do you want to share some of your background and expertise in actually having worked in that office?
Yep. The county clerk is responsible for getting the ballot made up properly and getting out in time so the absentee ballots can get taken care of in a timely fashion. Proper placement on the ballot and just making sure the process goes as it should. The election workers have to have trainings. I used to set those meetings up and make sure people got in their time for that is required so they can maintain their being able to be good at what they do in the polling places. And yeah, it's important. That is.
So if elected, what do you hope to accomplish in that office?
Well, I guess I've been hearing things with the new administrator in the county that there's talk of financials, maybe getting a new financial system. So I'm just following that along as they go to see where that goes. And if we get a new one, I'll gladly dig in and work on that. Otherwise, we'll continue with the system that is in place. I am familiar with that as well. Just having good support to your coworkers, making sure that they're knowledgeable of whatever they need to be, or get them the training that they need so they can do good work. And that's part of the success of the office is everyone knowing what they need to do and getting it done.
So one of the questions I get from voters a lot is, this is a partisan office, meaning that you have to pick a party to be able to run for this office. And a lot of times I hear voters ask, well, why is that? It's a county office. You know, are conducting elections and marriage licenses on behalf of the county. Like, why does it need to be partisan when it's at the local level? Can you talk a little bit about that, and then kind of your thoughts as you were going through this process on deciding to run and having to choose to run for a partisan office, and how?
Yep. When I first started, I always questioned why, or wondered why it had to be a partisan position. Well, there's nothing on that level that you vote at. There's nothing you can do to sway. I know your opinion is just as important as everyone else's. You have no power that way. You're just there to issue the marriage license, to make sure the election is run properly, to get the payroll done and pay the bills. I mean, that's your. So there's the why it is partisan. I guess if there's grassroots, if it starts at the county level and goes from there, but by state statute it is partisan, so you do have to pick a party. It was a little bit difficult for me to pick a party, I guess, because just like reffing a ball game, every time you blow that whistle, you're making half the crowd happy and you're making the other side of the crowd upset. And same thing when you pick a party, a political party, you're going to be, making half of them happy and half of them not. Filling out papers, when I went to get signatures, I had people voicing their opinions, strongly about the Democrats and the Republicans. And it's good information to have. I just feel somewhat caught in the middle, because there's I can't help them. I can't think of the right word to use, but my voice can't help them be a better Democrat or a better Republican. I just have job duties to do, and it doesn't matter. So.
It is kind of a strange situation, and for the other county offices too. Of course, treasurer, register of deeds. Things that you wouldn't associate partisanship with, and that's how it's structured.
Yeah, so. And it just, I feel bad, because I think at distance, half of the voters from me, if whatever political party I pick, half the voters will automatically be a little bit on the defense just because of the party I'm with, and not the ability or inability to do the job. So it's kind of frustrating on that end.
Okay, well, thank you for that answer. Is there anything else you'd like to share? August is, I do have competition, so August is an important election for me, obviously, and my opponent. On August 13th, the primary does make a difference for us. One of us will be going forward to the November election. I do feel somewhat confident in taking over the job. Like I said, I've been endorsed by the county clerk. He's been in the county for over 45 years, and I realize no one will fill those shoes perfectly like he has. But I feel comfortable and confident that I do have knowledge that I could hit the ground running in that position because of the time I've spent in there. I mean, it's almost 20 years, and I know since I stepped away for a few years, things have already changed a little bit, but I do feel comfortable getting back into that role. Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Mary Martin is a candidate running as a Republican for the Trempealeau County Clerk. I'm joined by Rob Grover, who is a candidate running as a Republican for the Trempealeau County Clerk. Rob, thanks for being here.
Melissa, it is always a pleasure to join you here. It's not my first time chatting with you, and not my first time here on WTCO, so it's always a pleasure when I can come and chat on community television here.
Yep, and not your first time running for office, so tell us about yourself.
You betcha. So, name's Rob Grover, born and raised right here in Trempealeau County. Lived here my entire life. Lived down in the Galesville area at this point, but grew up on my family's farm, graduated from GET High School, went to UW La Crosse, and I've kind of had a diverse background of experiences both within Trempealeau County, within Trempealeau County government, and outside of it. So I used to work as a corrections officer for the Trempealeau County Sheriff's Department. I did that for about 4.5 years, up until late 2016, which was an incredible experience. And then I served as Trempealeau County's Economic Development and Tourism Coordinator for a little over 2 years for the county, which was again incredibly interesting and gratifying work. You know, that work was really to help promote Trempealeau County. And you know, it sounds kind of sappy to say, but I really do love Trempealeau County. So that was a lot of fun. In the meantime of those things, I started a business called Winghaven Pizza Farm down on my family's farm. So we do pizza, beer and wine, live music, all sorts of fun stuff like that. And then currently, my day job, when we're not doing the pizza farm, is I'm the advancement director for Catholic Charities of the Diocese of La Crosse. So organization that serves in 19 counties in western Wisconsin, anywhere the diocese is. And my job is fundraising, marketing. I always say fundraising and friend raising. So helping bring in resources so that we can do incredible work in this area. So I have a really diverse background of experiences, a lot of passion that I think would suit me very well for the position of Trempealeau County Clerk.
Okay. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about those qualifications?
You bet. So, you know, one big piece of the work I've always done is with financial management, with the business, of course. Anyone who's a small business or a mid-sized or even large business owner knows that every cent counts. You have to keep very careful records, and you have to make sure that you're being transparent and things are accountable. And I think that's a really important skill that'll transfer well to the county clerk's position. And also with my job with Catholic Charities, you know, I'm in charge of helping fundraise multiple $1 million a year, and we have to keep track of that money. We have to make sure that the monies are put in the place that the donors want it to be, that every cent is accounted for, that if we're audited, we can explain what's going on, and all those things. So that work, I think, really suits me well for the position on the financial side of things. I also think, you know, having worked outside of government in that financial realm, I think there's new things we could be doing as a county. You know, talking to a lot of department heads here in the building, there's some, I would say, I think frustration is the right word, that sometimes it's hard for department heads or other people in departments to know where their budget's at. Access to financial information is sometimes complicated. It takes a while to get a hold of it. It makes it tough for budgeting. It makes it tough for our elected officials that maybe want information quickly on, hey, where are we at on things? So I do think there's some innovations that we could do as a county to make sure that things are more transparent and that people, whether it's department heads or members of the public, have better access to what's going on financially. Another area, kind of separate from that piece of it, is for many, many years I have worked as an election worker for the town of Trempealeau. And I think, you know, obviously, and Melissa, I know you're very involved in elections, both from an educational side point and then running it yourself in town of Burnside, right? Yeah. You know, having elections that people feel confident in is so important. And I have a lot of experience working with our clerk in the town of Trempealeau, and I would love to you know, bring some of that experience to the office as well. You know, and also as both a small business owner and my current role, I supervise many people in kind of different positions, and I think you need someone who has that leadership experience with supervising staff to make sure, one, you know, we're able to get the best out of them so they're thriving, and two, so that you're open-minded and humble enough to learn from them. So I think those are good traits that I bring to the position. And going back to the election piece of it, now, you know, now more than ever, fairly or unfairly, elections are getting scrutinized. And you need someone in this position that is not afraid to speak to the public, not afraid to articulate what the processes are, not afraid to answer questions, and also, but not afraid to push back when people are being unfair about the systems. And I will say, you know, being an election worker, I suspect you'd say the same thing. I don't want to speak for you. Our elections here in Trempealeau County are run by incredible professionals. They are, when a result comes in, you can trust it. And I think you need a clerk that's going to also be an advocate for those people in the municipalities, work with them, you know, not take this kind of top-down sort of this is how you have to do it, though there are certainly rules and laws and regulation, but a collaborative approach. And the way I manage staff, both at the Pizza Farm and with Catholic Charities, you know, it's a collaborative process where we're learning together. So I guess I've threw a lot out there with my experiences, but I think, yeah, there's just I've had a real diverse background of things, and I think it would make me great for the position.
Now, I know you haven't worked specifically in the county clerk's office, but could you explain what that job is and the duties that are entrusted to the county clerk?
You bet. Well, and some of them I alluded to in what I was talking about. So a large piece of it is helping organize the budgeting for accounting and doing the financial transactions and keeping track of the outgoing and the incoming and that sort of thing. And I actually think we're in a really exciting time in the office with the new county administrator. I'll just say it, I think she's really interesting, and I think she's got some really interesting ideas. And I think now's the time to get some new blood in there that might be willing to work closely with her, kind of not push back, be collaborative, because the budgeting and the financial side of it is so important. So I'm excited about the possibility of working with our new county administrator to bring in some new ideas. You know, working closely with the county board, right? So the county clerk in the office, they're putting together agendas, not only for the county board meeting, but also for the different committees and that sort of thing, and being able to interface with our elected officials and our department heads and the public that wants to know what their county's up to. I think that's a really incredibly important role of the county clerk, and something if done right, you know, the clerk can be someone who really helps educate the public on what's going on, or at the very least making it as easy as possible for someone to find out. And then again, that election piece of it, I mean, that is so essential, right? Because, you know, without elections people have confidence in, you can't have a strong democracy. So, you know, there are probably 100 little duties here and there, but I'd say what's the main crust of it all? It's the finances, it's the elections, it's the interfacing with the actual mechanics of the county, so the agendas, that sort of thing. All things that I think I have a lot of strong skills with, but also willing to bring in some new ideas.
So what makes you interested in running for this particular office?
Yeah. Well, I think the clerk has, for lack of better words, they kind of have their fingers in so many different parts of the county. And my passions are pretty diverse with the county. And I think that, again, with my background in the finance realm, and with my background with elections, and with my ability to, you know, be a strong advocate for the public and not being uncomfortable talking about things with the public. I think the clerk position just really appeals to me, one, because I think I could be really good at it, and two, I think that it's really important. And I love service. I'm, you know, like people say, it sounds kind of haughty when you say it, but I do believe in service. Small rural areas, things don't get done if people don't step up in both elected positions like this, but then, you know, also your local Lions Club, right? Like things don't happen unless people step up and do it. And you know, that's really why I'd love to do it. I think I could be a really great county clerk. I think I could bring a lot of interesting new ideas to the position. And again, I think we're at a crossroads right now where the clerk that we've had, who's been there for 40 some years, wonderful guy, is transitioning out. We have a new county administrator that just came in. Now is the time to really try to do some things that you know, is beneficial to the taxpayer, beneficial to the citizens of Trempealeau County. It makes the office even a better for the people here.
So as you know, this is a partisan position, and one of the questions I get from voters a lot, because, you know, I do work you know, as an election administrator, but also doing voter education, is why is it partisan when it's a county office? And I guess if you could, you know, kind of provide some explanation or your feelings on that, and then why you chose to run, you know, as a Republican for this office.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I think it is absolutely silly, silly that we have our county-wide offices be partisan offices. You know, come on.
Well, you'll have to talk to the Constitution.
Well, that's exactly it. Like there's no power to change it, but it's absolutely silly. And I think if you talk to anyone who is running for one of these county positions, you know, politics, actual partisan politics, doesn't play into how any one of us would actually operate within the office. So yeah, I personally wish we didn't have to necessarily have these positions be as a party. And you know, my politics has always been, I'm a pretty moderate person, right? And I'm running as a Republican, but I'm not running as Republican county clerk. I'm running as Rob Grover, who wants to serve as county clerk.
Speaking of that, if elected, what do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, so, and I'm probably rehashing some of what I've said, but I just think we are at a time now with new leadership at the county and the current clerk being there for so long that we really can do some new things. And when I say new things, I mean like, let's look at some new software that makes things simpler for department heads to be able to see in real time where their budget's at, and also make sure that information is available to the public. And so I think we need to take a total look at what we're doing in that office right now, what we're using for software. Also listen to the people that are working there. We have some incredible staff that have been in that office for years and years, and they may say, actually, Rob, I know you think this might be better to do this way, but listen to me, this is why we do it. I'm open to that too. So I think there's a real chance to bring in some really good new ideas. Also listen to our veteran employees. So I'd love to get that accomplished. I'd like to, personally, I've heard some frustration with some of our clerks in the county with sort of the relationship with the county clerk's office sometimes when it comes to elections. So I'd like to repair that relationship a little bit with those that need it. Other people may not think that. And really kind of revitalize sort of the relationship between the clerk's office and our municipal clerks. Whether it's having even, I mean, I know we do a lot, you're very involved in educating our clerks. What can we do that's even more beneficial for them? What do they want to get more training on? How can we make it more interesting? Also, how can we educate the public a little more about how elections work in Trempealeau County? Because education's power. If you know the people that are running your elections and you know the process for how it's being run, kind of takes away the any questions you might have. And again, I'm not saying there aren't ever issues with elections, and there could be things going on, but when you know the people and you know the process, you're a lot less likely to not have confidence in your system. So I just think I want to bring a new energy and vitality to the office. I want us not to be afraid to try some new things, and yeah, I want us to kind of embrace this new spirit of, I guess this new spirit that's being brought in by our new administrator.
Well, Rob Grover is running as a Republican for the Trempealeau County Clerk. I'm joined by Michelle Rose. She is a candidate for the Trempealeau County Treasurer. Michelle, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Melissa, for inviting me.
So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Michelle Rose, and I am currently the Deputy Treasurer for Trempealeau County right now. I've been with the county for 24 years. I have worked in various other offices, which includes the Register of Deeds. I was in there for quite a while.
Can you tell us, what the county treasurer does and all the responsibilities that are in that office?
Well, yep. A lot of people just think our office, all we do is collect the taxes and receipt money and pay the bills.
That's a lot, though.
That is a lot, but we do a lot of other things. We only collect the second half of the installments. We do tax foreclosures on properties that haven't been paid in over 3 years. We do tax certificates if you are delinquent the year the taxes were due.
I know being on a town board, I have to come to you a lot for financials and a little bit of tax info for the municipalities too.
Yep, and we do, if you guys have new people in that, we do help train them and let them know the procedures.
Older people with questions.
We're always there to help.
Yep. Okay. And this is a partisan office, the county treasurer, even though it's a county office. And the question I get from voters a lot is, why is it partisan? It's the treasurer position. Can you explain, why it's partisan and having to pick a party to run for that office?
It's a county position, and no matter what party I am, everyone is treated the same. I have to follow the state statutes, I have to follow the tax laws, I have to follow the policies.
Okay. Well, thank you for that background. What makes you interested in running for this particular office?
Well, the current treasurer, Lori Halama, she's retiring at the end of her term. So, and I'm the deputy treasurer, and I wanted to run. I want to do that.
Okay. And then if elected, you are running unopposed, but if elected, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, we have a couple of things. We need to make our county more efficient. So I will be part of looking at new financial program software, and we will be getting new tax program software also.
Okay. Is there anything else about your background that you would like to share that makes you qualified for this position?
Well, I have done financials for a very long time. I was a business owner previously. I did fire departments, financial records. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Anything else you'd like to share?
No, I am just excited for this new adventure, and I thank you very much for having me come on this.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on and being willing to share more about the office itself and also, you know, your hopes for it. Michelle Rose is a candidate for the Trempealeau County Treasurer. She's running as a Republican and she's running unopposed. I'm joined by Rebecca Cook. She is a candidate for representative in Congress for District 3. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
So can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Rebecca Cook. I was born and raised on an Eau Claire dairy farm, so not too far from here. I grew up showing cows in 4-H from the time I could walk and hold a halter. But like a lot of Wisconsin farmers, we had to sell our cows because of the price of milk and competition with larger dairies, which is a big reason why I'm running, is to really take on those corporate monopolies that you know, are robbing us of our farming traditions and work to really revitalize a lot of our rural communities. And so this is actually the second time that I ran for U.S. Congress, and so I ran last cycle in a Democratic primary, and I lost by just 8% of the vote, but I won a majority of counties, 11 out of 19, and I think it's because I've got a background and a message that I think really connects and resonates with people. You know, in addition to growing up on a dairy farm, I've ran a small business in the district for a lot of years. I ran a retail store in Eau Claire, and now I run a hospitality business. And then I also run a nonprofit organization that supports women entrepreneurs throughout 10 counties originally. So we've helped 45 businesses get launched across the region, and now have expanded to 8 more counties in northern Wisconsin. So we funded things like rural mental health clinics, independent bookstores, farm-to-table restaurants, you name it, really working to try and invest in regional and local economies, because when you drive through a lot of western Wisconsin, you see a lot of Dollar Generals, and that's you know, not what really makes our community special. It's the small businesses that line our main streets. And so because of some of the work that I did with small businesses, Governor Evers appointed me to the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation Board, or WEDC as it's better known. So I was able to advocate for those same small businesses, not just at their kitchen table, but also at the board level as well. And so when this seat opened up, to me it felt like a real opportunity to step up and to serve my community in a greater way. And so now, it being, you know, 2020, the 2024 cycle, I feel like that's even more urgent, and that we need more working class people and working class voices to represent us in the halls of Congress, and fewer people that are career politicians or radicals that want to hijack our government. So,
and then what makes you interested in running for this particular office?
Yeah, I think in particular, like I mentioned, when this seat opened up, it felt like an opportunity to step up and serve my community in a greater way. The district is 19 counties, so it's pretty large geographically, so it includes Trempealeau County, obviously, goes all the way down to Grant County, where Platteville is, through La Crosse, Eau Claire, which is where I'm from, and then a funky part of it dips over into central Wisconsin, into Stevens Point, and Wood County, Wood and Portage counties there. And so, you know, I think it really takes somebody that has a voice that can kind of connect with a lot of different constituencies. And I think that's what sets me apart, are my lived experiences. Growing up in a family that's really rooted in agriculture, and having run a small business for a lot of years. And one thing I didn't mention is that I also waitress 3 nights a week. Well, I'm running for Congress 7 days a week, and you don't see a lot of people with my kind of background or my type of profile running for Congress, because it requires raising funds to get there or being independently wealthy. But I think we need more people with my exact kind of background representing us in DC, and not having to wait their turn or climb the political ladder, but stepping off the sidelines to be a real voice for working families. So,
and if elected, what do you hope to accomplish?
That's a great question. So I'm running my campaign. My platform includes a lot of different things that I think folks here care about, folks in Western Wisconsin that are keeping them up at night. So the top is healthcare, increasing healthcare access and affordability. We just had 2 major hospitals close in Eau Claire, which has, you know, those are repercussions that are felt in communities like this. It's not just affecting people in Eau Claire, but it's affecting a lot of folks in surrounding rural communities. And so, you know, I share this story a lot with people. My parents, they travel to get their dental work done because it's cheaper to do in like Mexico than it is to do in our own country. And when I tell folks that, they go, wow, I know people that do that too, because it is cheaper, and it's cheaper to take a whole trip and do that than to just get your dental work done at home. So, you know, expanding Medicare to cover vision, dental, and hearing, the things that deteriorate as folks age, is just plain common sense to me. And when I talk to people, whether they're Republicans or they're Democrats, they're like, yeah, I get that. That's common sense, right? My dad was diagnosed with cancer at the launch of my campaign, which has been tough for our family for a variety of reasons. But I think what was even more difficult was he went into Walgreens to get his prescription drugs for the first time. He had a $1,300 copay for a 1-month supply of one drug, and a $1,500 copay for another 1-month supply of another drug, which is crazy. And that's the story of a lot of people here in Western Wisconsin that are struggling to pay for their prescription drugs. And many times they're life-saving prescription drugs. And so we have so many people that are politicians in Congress that are just lining their pockets with special interest dollars versus taking on those big pharma corporations that are price gouging a lot of consumers. And kind of talking about that, like, consumer price gouging. You know, I think there's a lot of folks. When I was with my parents here just the other day, and you know, I was like, what do you think are the biggest issues? And they're like, the economy. You know, and I think there's a lot of people that feel very stretched thin, whether that's at the gas pump, whether that's at the grocery store, and you know, they feel like that squeeze right on their pocketbooks. And so taking on those big corporations that are price gouging consumers kind of at every turn, enforcing antitrust laws, I think is very, very important, and making sure that workers are making wages that are appropriate. A lot of times you see these corporations that are making huge record profits, and the people that are benefiting are not their workers. You know, it's the big CEOs, lobbyists, things like that. And so if we can enforce antitrust laws, I think that's really important, as you're also seeing like a lot of consolidation among different industries. You know, if you think about agriculture, there's like 4 main meat processors, and that's it. That's how much things have consolidated. So that's why I think it's so important to enforce laws like that, or antitrust laws. And then a couple of other issues, there's a lot that I could talk about, and a lot of reasons why I'm running, and like some of the top things that I want to get done. But whether I'm in an urban community or a small town, I hear from a lot of folks that are concerned about the limits being put on reproductive freedoms and kind of moving back in time to the rights that people had. And so we saw Roe v. Wade overturned, and one of the things I'd like to do when I get to Congress is codify Roe v. Wade into federal law. That's getting back to where we were just 2 years ago. So it's not something that's radical. It's something that we've had as rights for a really long time. It doesn't stop just with like abortion access, but also includes like birth control and IVF. So many things are really under attack. And we've got to work to preserve those rights. And I talk a lot about like freedoms and rights, because that really is what it is. It's not my role as a politician to be in a doctor's office making decisions for you and your family. That's between you and your spouse, and the doctor. And so that's something that I'm hearing from a lot of people is a big concern and a big issue for them this cycle as well, and beyond obviously this cycle, and things that they're just concerned about. Being a farmer's daughter, having grown up on a dairy farm, you know, I think it would be pretty great if we had farmers that actually crafted the Farm Bill. What kind of a novel concept to have people that actually know something about agriculture craft something that would help to save and benefit small to mid-sized farms like mine that you know, had to go out of business because of the competition with big corporate farms. And you're seeing a lot of foreign nationals that are coming in to buy our farmland, which is also very concerning to me and concerning to a lot of farmers that I'm talking to. And that's from both a food security perspective and also from a national security perspective. And so I think it's really important that we're protecting our land and protecting our food security as well. So, and finally, from an environmental perspective, you know, I think a lot of people in this district care about conservation. And we have some water quality issues that really need to be addressed. So we have PFAS, forever chemicals, that are in our waters, and we know that they are, you know, in some of our big city well waters like in Eau Claire and in La Crosse, but there's a lot of smaller municipalities that some might not be testing because the cost of remediation is so great. And so I think it's important for us to make sure that we're allocating federal dollars to call for more research, to call for more testing, and to call for more remediation. There's a lot of things when it comes to the environment that I'd like to take on, and then I think that's starting to build strong relationships with rural electric cooperatives who, you know, are working as much as they can to move towards more of a reliance on renewable energy than on fossil fuels, but that's going to take some time in order to make sure that our grid is reliable. But being a strong partner with those folks so that I'm crafting legislation that doesn't seem so far out of touch, but are things that our smaller energy companies can actually institute and start to move over.
Okay. You alluded to this, but you know, you represent would represent a very rural area, and Washington, D.C. is anything but, including a lot of the people there. So how would you, you know, represent the rural areas and the rural needs in that, you know, kind of arena?
Yeah. A huge part of it is showing up, and it's showing up now in the campaign, and it's not forgetting the promises that you make. I don't write off any community because it's too small or too red. We really make a point of listening. And, you know, understanding issues are going to be different in a rural community versus in an urban community. And you're not going to understand those issues unless you're really talking to like local lawmakers. And though I'm running for United States Congress, so, you know, we have state assembly reps, state senate reps, county board folks that I can be really hearing from of like, what are the top issues? What are you hearing in like the community of Whitehall or the community of Independence or Arcadia? I'm not going to know what's going on in every community, but if I'm building relationships both with Democrats and Republicans and across the aisle with local lawmakers, that helps me to stay more in tune to what a community really needs and how I can be an advocate in DC. I think the other thing that I really want to do is run a really strong constituent-centered office that has district offices throughout the 3rd CD that feel really accessible for constituents to be able to come in and share their concerns, you know, and have social, you know, caseworkers like on staff to be able to help move things through it and really have strong outcomes, that it's not so focused. You know, it's important to pass the laws and get behind the bills that I need to in DC for like broader sweeping changes, but it's also important to have a really strong constituent-centered office that actually works just to serve our local communities. And so one of the things I'd also like to do is to have my district or my chief of staff not just be in DC. You'll see a lot of chiefs of staff just stay in DC and the whole focus is there, but to come back and split time and work with our district director so that we're not losing sight of why we're there and that we're really truly representing voters in the 3rd CD.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Rebecca Cook is running for representative in Congress for the 3rd District. I'm joined by Katrina Shanklin. She is a candidate running for U.S. Congress in the 3rd District. Katrina, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So can you start off by telling us about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Katrina Shanklin. I'm a Democratic state representative. I represent Portage County in the State Assembly, and I am now running for Wisconsin's 3rd Congressional District, which is 19 counties across western and central Wisconsin, from Platteville all the way up to River Falls, and from Eau Claire and La Crosse over to Stevens Point in Wisconsin Rapids.
So vast territory.
It's huge, absolutely.
So what are you hearing from voters in those areas about what's important to them?
I have been traveling all over the 3rd Congressional District, and we've been hearing a lot from voters about key issues like increasing access to affordable health care and lowering health care and prescription drug costs. This is a huge issue for a lot of families and seniors. And it's something that I'm very committed to working on in Congress, just as I have in the state legislature. We're also talking a lot about public education and making sure that every level of government is funding it adequately so that we don't have to over-rely on property taxes. A lot of schools are going to referendum right now, and people are really struggling to make their property tax payments as a result. Another issue we're focusing on is water quality. So from Black River Falls to Eau Claire and French Island in the La Crosse town of Campbell area, we're hearing from folks on PFAS, and we're also talking a lot about nitrate contamination, and everyone deserves the ability to drink water from their taps. So this is an issue I've worked on extensively in the Capitol, and one that I want to tackle in Congress. In addition, we're talking about good government, open, transparent, honest, and accountable government. We really want to make sure that people have a voice in Congress and that people in western and central Wisconsin feel heard.
Okay. And so you've served in the Assembly. What makes you interested in running for this particular office?
I was raised by 2 public school teachers, and they always taught me from a very young age that instead of complaining about something, I should really do something about it. So even as a kid, I would see litter on the side of the road, and I would just start complaining right away, and my mom would focus me. She would say, well, how are you going to solve it? So started learning, okay, I'll just pick it up myself, right? And so for me, I see a lot of problems in Washington. It's not working for us, and we have seen it work successfully in the past. I'm thinking specifically about the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and the CHIPS and Science Act, all of which have created long-term family supporting jobs and strengthened our local economies. So we know that they're capable of working together when the right people are in office, but I don't see that happening right now with our current representative, and I decided instead of just complaining about it, I'm going to do something about it. And given my time in the Capitol, I have passed 225 bipartisan bills into law that I've either introduced or co-sponsored, and these were signed by both Democratic and Republican governors. So it shows I can work with my colleagues from both parties to solve big problems like strengthening our clean water laws, reducing healthcare costs, and helping farmers with conservation. And these are issues that I'm hearing about from people all over the 3rd Congressional District. It's something that I want to do in Congress, whether it's passing a good farm bill that works for our farmers and our families, that addresses food insecurity, conservation, and support for farmers. I want to get that done. We're not seeing that leadership right now in Congress.
Okay. And if elected to this position, what do you hope to accomplish?
There are a lot of things I want to do, but first and foremost, I really want to be a champion of western and central Wisconsin. I want to see someone in government, in the federal branch of government specifically, who actually listens and get things done on our behalf. And it doesn't have to be partisan. There are issues and needs that everyone cares about, whether it's public education, infrastructure, healthcare, broadband, or democracy. One of the biggest issues I've heard from folks about on the campaign trail is the need to protect our democracy. We've seen it come under threat recently. And what we want to do, what I want to do specifically in Congress, is strengthen it by restoring some of the Voting Rights Act specifically that was struck down over the last few years, and also make it easier to vote safely and securely. And so whether it's banning partisan gerrymandering on the federal level, which protects and enhances our democracy, or protecting our voter rights, that's an issue that I really want to tackle. I also want to tackle our reproductive freedoms. This is probably the #1 issue I hear about as I travel across western and central Wisconsin, and people are very concerned that they have to worry about having an ectopic pregnancy or a miscarriage because Roe v. Wade fell. We just had the 2nd-year anniversary of the Dobbs decision, which took away our freedoms to make our own medical decisions. And there are some people on the federal level, Republican leaders, who want to enact a national abortion ban. And I'm going to stop that abortion ban in its tracks and make it easier for folks to access birth control, IVF for fertility treatments, and abortion when they need to.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
So as a lawmaker in the state capitol, I have been representing people in central Wisconsin for 12 years. And in that time, I've gotten a lot done. We have enacted our state's first community paramedic law, which created mobile integrated healthcare in Wisconsin, making it easier for folks in rural areas to access affordable healthcare. I want to continue that work in Congress. Another issue I've been proud to work on in Congress is protecting, or in the legislature, and what I'll do in Congress is protecting our water quality. So I know that in Portage County, where I represent right now, 1 in 4 people can't drink water from their taps. And I know across Trempealeau County, across Eau Claire County, and other parts of this region here in western Wisconsin, the same thing is true. Whether it's PFAS or nitrate, we have a huge drinking water problem in our state. And I want to usher in a federal program to help people remediate and replace their wells, just like I've done on the state level. So 2 years ago in the legislature, I worked with Governor Evers to launch a $10 million program for families and businesses across Wisconsin. If you can't drink water from your taps right now, you are still eligible for this program if you have a household income of under $100,000 as a business or as a family. People across Wisconsin have utilized this program because of my leadership, and almost 500 families have already gotten a new well, and either they replaced their well, they reconstructed their well, or they repaired their well, and they're now able to drink water from their taps. And I'm really proud of that because I know this is a key issue for a lot of people who were already paying a lot of money to get a reverse osmosis system in, and so now instead folks are getting water directly from their taps because of that program. So it's an issue I want to work on in Congress, but I also want to work on prevention. And so I serve on the Assembly Agriculture Committee, and I have worked with my Republican and my Democratic colleagues to pass several bills into law for farmers. One, we expanded our state's farmland preservation program. We upped the tax credits per acre. Any farmer who enrolls in that program participates in what's called our best conservation practices in our state. That means they're protecting our soil, they're protecting our water and our land. And that's great for everybody. It's good for anyone who drinks groundwater from a private well. It's also really good for our surface waters, for anglers out there who enjoy their Class A trout streams in the area. And so we wanted to encourage more farmers to participate in this program, so we expanded access to it and we lowered barriers. And I'm really proud of that work because it had been a long time in the making. It took a long time to get it done. Another bill that I passed recently that I'd like to highlight, because I also want to do this in Congress, specifically in the Farm Bill, is a new program to help farmers with nitrogen runoff specifically. That's nitrate contamination. This is an issue that affects our health. And so 1 in 10 folks with private wells across Wisconsin have a well that tests above the federal standard of 10 parts per million for nitrate. This is a prevalent issue here in Trempealeau County and across western Wisconsin. We created, and I worked with a farmer who's also a legislator to pass this. We created a new program called the Nitrogen Optimization Pilot Program that rewards farmers for 3 growing seasons of working with any UW system researcher. It could be someone at UW Eau Claire, it could be somebody at UW Extension, it could be somebody at UW Stevens Point or UW Platteville. But the goal is they spend some time thinking creatively and innovatively about how to reduce their nitrogen inputs. So that way they're actually lowering the runoff that goes into our groundwater and our surface water, like our rivers and streams and lakes. And so this program has been wildly successful. From cranberry growers to corn growers to potato growers, we're really proud of the program. And it's many participants across industries and across regions. This is going to lower and prevent nitrate contamination from happening, and I hope to do even more of that in Congress. The Farm Bill has some great programs in the conservation title. It's always underfunded and oversubscribed, and I want to make sure that we are fulfilling those needs because I know farmers are some of our best conservationists, and I want to help them utilize those programs. So a final bill that we did created a cover crop insurance rebate program. Cover crops are fantastic for runoff and reducing it. They actually kind of suck up those extra nutrients and prevent them from getting into our groundwater, which flows into our surface water. And so we have a $5 per acre cover crop insurance rebate program that we launched. At the same time, we created a new position on the state level for a state hydrogeologist. There are communities like Trempealeau County that are grappling with well contamination. They're trying to figure it out. They're trying to launch their own surveillance and monitoring programs for private wells. wells. They're trying to help people repair and replace their wells or get water treatment, and they're trying to map the hot spots so they can plan using their planning and zoning departments to think ahead about how to prevent this contamination. Well, we need a state hydrogeologist to help them with that. So this person specifically is charged with helping them with their well testing programs, their monitoring programs, and how they move forward. And we really need that, those resources on the state level being provided to local governments. I want to build on that work in Congress. I know that the intersection between water quality and agriculture is an important thing to tackle, and I have always led on this issue with farmers at my side. I know that they're the experts on this and that they never want to do anything to jeopardize the public health or environment. In fact, they are very proud of protecting our land and water. And so working together with our farmers on these key initiatives in Wisconsin over the last few years, I'm really proud of the progress we've made, and I know we can do even more in Congress. So I want to lead on the Farm Bill specifically and the conservation titles to enact some new programs like I just mentioned. I also want to protect the Mississippi River and champion its resilience and the water quality issues, as well as tackling invasive species. So those are just a few of the issues that I've worked on in the State Assembly that I am prepared and ready to take on in Congress.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to share?
Sure. So another issue that I hear a lot about from people across Wisconsin is public education. And I want to talk about it on both the K through 12 public school level as well as higher education, because there's certainly a connection. We know in Wisconsin that we are having a record number of referenda across the state for our public schools. In fact, just about everywhere I go, I have these 2-hour coffee meet and greets where anyone can walk in, and we never know who will come, and you don't have to sign up in advance. You just show up and ask questions, and they're a lot of fun. And I'll say, raise your hand if you voted for a referendum recently, and almost the entire room will raise their hand. So I'm not bashing referenda at all. They're an important tool for local governments to use to go above the levy, but I feel that they are overused, and I know almost every local government official would agree. Nobody relishes going to referendum. They feel it necessary because our communities are strapped. And it's important to note that our state has a $3 billion surplus. So we should be sharing that wealth instead of forcing local communities, often seniors in their homes on fixed incomes, to vote for these referenda over and over again. So I have a plan on the federal level to fund our public schools, and one of the key initiatives here is by funding our federal IDEA. This is the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, and we're only funding it at about 12 to 13% of what it should be, and the costs are supposed to be 40% reimbursement from the federal government to the states. So if we were to do that here in Wisconsin, we'd have $1 billion more going directly to our public schools. I also want to work with states to give they should be rewarded for sharing some more of that money back to the schools and creating a supplemental grant program specifically to help reduce the over-reliance on property taxes. So I want to create a grant program for that on the federal level to encourage states to stop over-relying on property tax funding for their schools, especially in rural areas where you have a lot of agricultural land and low population, sparsely populated. You just don't have the formula for being able to fund schools equitably and fairly. And so that's where the state should come in, and the funding formula on the state level is broken and we have to reform it. And so I want to help on the federal level in Congress by encouraging states to look at this and really help seniors on fixed incomes, working families, people with low incomes who are concerned about never being able to afford a home and the property tax cost, right? So we can do this together. I think this is a very bipartisan idea, and I would be proud to champion that issue. And then let's talk about what happens when we fairly fund our public schools. Then we have, public schools are our cornerstone of democracy. They're really about ensuring everyone has equal access to the same education, and that means economic opportunity. And so I want to ensure we're fairly paying our teachers. I want to raise our teachers' pay and create a grant program for teachers on the federal level to do that. I also want to make sure that when people graduate high school, they have options, technical colleges and universities, as well as apprenticeships. There is great dignity in work and deciding what you want to do next, whether it's finding an apprenticeship and doing a 2 or 4 year program on learning how to be an electrician or a plumber. There's also technical colleges, which are vital, and we need to fund those fairly and equitably. And then there's universities, and we have seen 5 different 2-year campuses in our UW system shut down or be about to shut down over the last few months, and I'm very concerned about that. Here in the 3rd Congressional District, Richland Center was one of them, and I traveled to Richland Center and Muscadet and talked to folks there who are deeply concerned about the economic impact and how many young people might no longer be in their community because of it. So I want to ensure that here in Wisconsin, we're keeping our campuses open and we're able to have that economic and educational opportunity for our young people to succeed and then to stay here in Wisconsin. Because at the end of the day, we have a workforce shortage. About 130,000 people are set to retire out of the workforce by 2030. So we have a lot of work we have to do to invest in our education and infrastructure to keep people here. And I will add one more thing to that when it comes to infrastructure. We also need to look at our healthcare infrastructure. In the Chippewa Valley, we have been hearing from a lot of folks who are very, very worried about accessing healthcare in their region, whether it's the emergency departments, the behavioral health care system, or whether it's the OBGYN access and cancer patients. I've heard from so many people across the district, regardless of zip code, people are bringing it up in central Wisconsin and southwest Wisconsin too. And so we need to ensure that we are adequately funding the reimbursement of Medicare and Medicaid. I think that was a huge issue because of our state's incredibly low Medicaid reimbursement rate. Those doors closed, and we could have prevented that had we acted, and that's something I've always championed in the state assembly, is not only expanding Medicaid but increasing the reimbursement rates so our providers' doors and our hospitals' doors don't close. So I want to work on that in Congress as well and be a champion for western and central Wisconsin. And what I'll say about my leadership style and how I've worked in the state assembly is I like to sit down and get to know our community leaders and our community members. I have coffees all over the district, just as I've done campaigning too, and really gotten to hear very personal stories as well as people sharing, you know, their viewpoints and issues and perspectives, and that's really informed my candidacy and my campaign. So as we are closing out the next few weeks of this election pre-primary, I want to highlight some of my endorsements on this campaign. I'm proud to have the endorsement of 17 different labor unions, from public sector teachers and professors and staff to our firefighters, to private sector workers like bricklayers and iron workers and electricians and plumbers. And I'm really proud of that coalition because I've always stood with workers in the Capitol, and I'll always stand with workers in Congress. I want to make sure everybody has a level playing field and equal opportunity to succeed in life, and that means championing workers and fair wages. I'm also really proud to have the endorsement of End Citizens United. This is a national group that's working hard to get big dark money out of politics. I think anyone should be able to run for office if they want to, but too much money in politics has made it very difficult. And I'm also championing our democracy everywhere I go, and that's why Let America Vote, which is part of End Citizens United, has endorsed my candidacy. In addition, I have lawmakers from all over western Wisconsin who've endorsed me, and that includes Representative Steve Doyle, Representative Jill Billings, Representative Jody Emerson, and Senator Jeff Smith. And I'm really proud that we have local leaders from all over the district, whether it's city council, county board, mayors, and more, who've endorsed my candidacy. So I want to encourage people to go on my website, KatrinaShanklandForCongress.com, to check out my platform, contact me if you have any questions, and of course, I hope to earn your vote by August 13th, and really appreciate the opportunity to run for Congress.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm so pleased to be here, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah. Katrina Shankland is running in the primary as a Democrat for U.S. Congress for the 3rd District. Thank you for joining us for the Meet the Candidates series. Absentee voting for the August 13th partisan primary has already begun. Voters can request an absentee ballot on the myvote.wi.gov site or by contacting the municipal clerk. Other information, including registering to vote online, how to find a polling place, and what's on the ballot, can also be found on the myvote.wi.gov site. Polls open at 7 a.m. on Election Day and close at 8 p.m., and all voters must bring a photo ID in order to receive a ballot. Thank you again to the candidates for participating in the Meet the Candidates series, and thank you for watching.